Greetings, one and all, and welcome back to the 1904 Club, of course, the Hull City podcast from the Hull Daily Mail. This week, we found somebody that was hidden in the cupboard since deadline day. There he is. Fletch is back. Fletch, how are you?
I'm all right. I found my way out the cupboard. It was a very big cupboard, I have to say. I think I ended up in Narnia. So all good now. All good. I'm enjoying seeing that the Black and Amber Army of Hull are picking up some positive results as well whilst I'm on my travels elsewhere. So it's all good. It's nice to be back. Nice to be back. How are you all?
It's lovely to have you back. We've got Kathryn she's behind some greenery, or some greenery behind her even.
It's a very, I was going to say fancy, but it's not really, Telegraph office. I'm sort of in the cafe area, so if people walk behind me, that's why. They're not, hopefully no one will gate crash it, but just on Fletch coming back, like now we've had this run of really good results. If it all goes south, we know who to blame, don't we?
All right, KB, I was going to say that myself, so it's fine.
Fletch, you may remember, regular listeners may remember that Fletch was due on a podcast a few weeks ago, and he actually requested the time of the podcast, and we moved it for him, and his alarm didn't go off, so he was given like you have club fines and stuff. He was given a club suspension. That suspension has now ended, and he's back. It's great to have him back. And Burns is there as well, kind of overseeing the club issue fines.
Yeah. Have they got any good players in Narnia, Fletch? Any worth signing for the January transfer window?
I'll keep those under the hat for now.
So lots to go at, I would have thought, on this episode of the 1904 Club, Baz. I know we've got a lot of messages about the injury situation, but we'll probably talk about, and we will talk about it, we'll definitely talk about it, but probably talk about the happier things, which is the good form at the moment. The Leicester win, the Charlton draw. We've not had the opportunity to talk about either. What is it? 11 points out of 15, 10 out of 12. Going well, heading to Norwich on Saturday. So who wants to kick it off?
Well, just before we do, Prut sends his apologies. He's at a pumpkin patch this week, or today. So I can't wait to see the pictures of Prutton picking pumpkins. That is going to be quite something.
Are you sure it's not because he's got a clause in his contract he doesn't have to work with Fletch anymore? So if Fletch appears on the 1904 Club, then he's having nothing to do with it.
I mean, but anyway, there is that, and the fact he's one of those who's Prutton that he don't work half term. So when it's half term, he bails, and his excuse today is, I'm going pumpkin picking. So anyway, that's where he is today. But yeah, look, let's kick off with the week as it was, because I think, I think in the immediate aftermath when James Bree crosses and Luke Berry scores on Saturday, everybody's feeling a bit down. But I think in the grand scheme of things, 7 points from 9 in the week is an exceptional return. It really should have been 9, and I think there is that element of annoyance that if the goalkeeper had dealt with the initial cross, if Joe Gowhart tracks Berry, perhaps they go on and see that game out, because it looked like one of those really professional 1-0 wins that we see teams that get in the playoffs achieve. When it's not pretty, it's pretty ugly. It's the third game coming back from an international break, and I think that they will be frustrated. But I think you've got to look at the bigger picture. You've got to say 7 points from 9, 10 from 12, and as you say, 11 from 15, Burnsy. So I think they're making really good progress. And after 12 games, I think if you'd have offered any City fan 8th outside the playoffs on goal difference, a lot of people would have said you're absolutely mental. And yes, we'll snap your hand off every day of the week and twice on Sunday, Burnsy.
Indeed, and it's good, the progressing. We can't avoid the injuries. We will come to that, and the injuries biting. But they got in a position where they should have won the game on Saturday. For me, should have seen it out. Said at the start of the game, we all knew that Charlton set pieces are a big factor in what they're about. I did think the Charlton game was probably the most challenging game of the week, because they've got a method, they've settled to it, and they've done well. And if Tyrese Campbell had taken his chances in the first half, the contest might have been over. He could have had a hat trick. early. But City adjusted to the new system. They had to play that system because he's got because of the injury problems and everything like that. I keep coming back to the injury problems. But in the end, I think it's a decent point against playoff rivals, we'll call them, given where they are. Kathryn, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I think I would agree. I mean, if you'd have offered those points at the start of the run of those fixtures, I think we would have all taken them. I'd kind of said, especially with the injuries going into Charlton, they were in such good form. I obviously, we weren't sure about Giles after the Leicester game, and I was thinking, God, if he's not there, I would absolutely take a point against Charlton. And obviously, he keeps doing that in games. He keeps looking like he's going to be injured, and then he's actually all right at the end. But I think, you know, to not have your top scorer for Leicester and Charlton in Ollie McBurney, and to still get 2 positive results, you can't really complain. And it's just the same kind of issues, maybe kind of creeping back in with defensively, defending set pieces, just kind of staying switched on for 90 minutes, which sometimes we don't always manage to do. And also just kind of getting through a game, getting a clean sheet is it seems to be a little bit tricky for us still. Obviously, looking at the kind of goals scored and goals against, we're sort of the same on each. And I think is it Sheffield, the 2 Sheffield teams that have conceded more than us, I think, but only a couple of teams scored more. So I think we still kind of know our strengths and still kind of know what the weaknesses are, and it's still about trying to maybe sort that out in the next run of games. But you look at Norwich now and you think that's a winnable game, having just watched us in the last kind of run of fixtures that we've had.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really is. I think the frustration comes from Saturday with, as I say, you're going into the 90th minute. There's only 5 minutes added on. And I said this on Saturday, I thought the goalkeeper was at fault for the cross before the corner. He comes a long way out. He tries to I admire him trying to come and deal with it. But if you can't catch it, get two fists on it and send it back to the halfway line, everybody has to go out and reset. That corner then doesn't happen. So I think the goalkeeper's either got to claim it, he's got to be 100% convinced he's going to claim it, or he's got to get 2 hands on it and get it away. In reality, he did neither. He flapped at it. He flapped it down onto the ground. It then got lifted towards goal and deflected onto the roof of the net. Then you have the fiasco with the messing around with the ball in the corner. Is it in the corner? Is it in the quadrant? Is it not? You know, did that affect their concentration? But ultimately, they're professional footballers. They have to deal with those moments, and they didn't deal with the corner, and they've allowed. You know, it's not like Luke Berry's ran from miles out, and he's got the run on somebody, or it's a bit of a mess, and he's had a bit of a look. He's completely unmarked, and that is unforgivable. So I think they will. I can't help but think it is frustrating. But I think if you go back through the games Burnsy, just before I come to you, I think they got away with one against Sheffield United when the penalty saved. That really should go in. They obviously got away with a couple at Birmingham with Charlie Hughes, a penalty in the first half. Perhaps that went their way. That was fortunate. They got away with the Crooks second yellow card that went to Egan. So perhaps they got away with that. Then against Leicester, Harry Winks hits the other side of the crossbar. That could easily bounce into the net as a way. So look, I think on the balance of the 3 games, or the 4 games if you include Sheffield United, they perhaps had the rub of the green, not with injuries, of course, but with moments in games that went their way. So if that's one that went against them with the way they dealt with that corner, so be it. It's the Championship. Very few teams, probably certainly this season, apart from Coventry, are able to go 4 in a row. They've still won 3 in a row. They've won. They were a couple of minutes away from equaling last season's home record in so early in the season. So I think they're making giant strides forward, and I think the manager deserves a huge amount of credit for what he's achieving. And I mean, people will have questions about the system. Was he too pragmatic on Saturday? Again, I think had they have held on, everyone goes, well, given the situation, given who they were playing, given the injuries, he got the system right because they won the game. I think it's individual errors that cost them winning the game.
Yeah. It was. I think Gelhardt lost his man, which is about the only black mark against him in his recent performances. I think he was the one with Berry from memory on the replay, and we will talk about the fine form he's in and what we make of him. Fletch, You've not been with us for a while. What are you making of it all?
Well, I think what I'm making of it is a team on the outside that's hardworking, determined, and is there for one another. Statistically, they look very good because they've scored more goals since the Leonard Sutsky era. Their points average is the same as Steve Bruce when they got promoted in 2016. I was really impressed actually watching the highlights back of the Charlton game of the press that resulted in Charlton giving their goal away. The fact there's 7 players up in the final third and the way they're all positioned, if you freeze frame it and pause it, if you watch the highlights, you can see that every player in an amber shirt has locked on to somebody. So even though Charlton give the ball away, there's so much pressure and presence for them to lose it and then to stick it in the back of the net, which is really good to see. Geldhart should pick up his man easier, but that's part and parcel. That happens on occasion throughout the season. Mistakes like that are going to happen. But on the outside, things seem to be ticking along nicely, and we'll talk about injuries. But is there a positive spin you can put on things where if they are picking up injuries, but they're still picking up points? That shows that they are determined, they're gutsy. I like the fact as well that they appear to be maybe a little bit more nasty as well, because I've said for years that Hull City previously have been a little bit too nice, and that's maybe another dimension to them as well.
Yeah. I think there is an element of what's the modern phrase, housery about them, isn't there? And that's the likes of McBurney coming in, I think has given them that sort of mindset. And the coach as well. He wanted them to be a bit more physical, win a few more duels. The yellow cards might come and bite them on the bum at some point, because aren't they after Derby the second most yellow cards in the division, or at least they were before Saturday. I've not counted since, but that's a price you pay because they've added that extra physicality, that extra sort of however you would describe it. I can't find the right word at the moment, but they've added that to the game, and they needed to, and so they're not a soft touch anymore. Nobody's going to turn them over, which is good stuff. There was a word I was looking for there, Baz. Couldn't find it.
I think you're right, Burnsy, and that's something that Sergei Yakurovich has referenced throughout the early weeks of the season. That he feels they're too nice, that they are not too soft, but maybe not as streetwise as they need to be. But when you've got players like McBurney, obviously, and Lundstrom, I know they're not in the team at the minute, but they're around. They're in the. It's not like they're away from it. You've got Egan, Louis Coyle. They've got a lot of players there that have played. Crooks is another one that have got. Probably the best one, actually, Crooksy. But you've got a lot of experience there. And I think we saw it at Birmingham when things were getting really heated in that crazy spell before that melee before the halftime whistle. They dealt with it. They stuck up for each other. They were together. And then they went and scored the second goal and completely, disarmed Birmingham by scoring the second goal. You were there, Burnsy, as well as I. The atmosphere at the start of the second half was completely dead at St Andrews. Had that goal have not gone in and it goes in at 1 each, they're still foaming at the mouths, aren't they, about what happened and about feeling that Carl Joseph should have been sent off. Perhaps second half is a different, the start of the second half is a different kettle of fish. But the fact that they went out and got the second goal before the break with Regan, they completely disarmed all that kind of frustration and anger from Birmingham. So I think they're getting better at it. The togetherness is really impressive. The players keep coming to me and saying, this is Lee Miller said it unfortunately before his injury. It's probably the best dressing room he's been in, and he's been in quite a few different dressing rooms at different clubs. Or he's played in Europe, so that's heartening to hear. It is just the one worry of it all, and they're eighth after 12 games. I think that's fantastic. Only out of it on goal difference, the top 6, but it's just the injuries, isn't it? And we said this throughout the summer at the start of the season that. The big worry, particularly when you were signing certain types of players, Shemi Ajayi being one of them, was when you're shopping in the market the City were shopping in because of the situation they'd got themselves into. Generally, you're signing players that either other clubs don't want or other clubs would like, but they're not fit enough or don't play enough games. Shemi Ajayi is in that category. I've said this before, there's no way on earth that West Brom get rid of Shemi Ajayi if he's playing 35, 40 games a season. Unfortunately, he came to City and got injured after his first game. Now he's back. Let's hope he gets a run in the team and can stay fit. But you always run that risk when you're signing free transfers and loans that players, and it can happen with any player, of course it can, but you kind of feel it maybe is more likely when you've got players that perhaps haven't played for a while, or you're flogging them. You know, McBurney was flogged, Lundstrom was flogged. Did Miller playing 100 minutes against Leicester have an impact on him doing his hamstring, after 10 minutes on Saturday? I don't know. Nobody knows. Perhaps it's just coincidence, an unhappy coincidence. But it is the injuries that they've got and the amount of injuries. There's so many, there's 5 or 6 of them that are out that are first-team players, and they're going to feel it. But as Fletch, you made a great point. The fact they're still picking up points, the fact they beat Leicester without Ollie McBurney is a huge, shot in the arm. Without Balumi, without John Lundstrom, they got a decent point in the end against Charlton without 7 or 8 key players, and obviously Matt Crooks playing through an injury as well. So I think you have to admire what they're doing, and just hope that after the international break things start to settle down, players start to come back, and that they can have a bit of a run of luck as well, because all teams that have good seasons get that bit of luck with injuries, and they've had no luck so far, and they're still 8th in the Championship. So I think that's something to admire and also be positive about.
I knew we couldn't avoid the injuries for long, because the messages coming into the 1904 club have largely been all about the injuries. I know we will talk. I'd like to talk about Gelhardt later in the show, and I know you've been talking to Adjan, Baz, and he did a Q&A with the fans, so we'll talk about that as well. But seeing we're here, we may as well go to the injuries, and I reckon it's Miller, McBurney, Lundstrom, Casey Palmer, Balumi, Matazo, Akintola, Famewo, and possibly Crooks. There's a question mark over Crooks. You'll give us the information in a bit, Baz, I'm sure. Tigerbeck90 says, are the team being overtrained, or is there a problem with their conditioning, as injuries appear to be a concern again for the club? Is it felt this is due to the facilities being poor for the first team, or are the team overworked? This is a persistent worry for the club. Jam says, seem to be having a cursed season again. Maybe a Ted Lasso style banishment is in order. And Oliver Harsley says, the injury gods seemingly don't want us to do well, as we're lumbered with an ever-growing list of key absentees ahead of a trip to the land of Partridge. Still think we could, it's my spiritual home, it feels like the land of Partridge. Still think we can get something from the game, but always wary of facing teams that haven't won for a while. We will talk about Norwich. And Tiger Delic says, what's all this ox? Can you say bollocks on the 1904 club?
Well, you just have, so crack on.
Yeah, so what's all this bollocks? I'm reading about injuries being down to the training schedule or facilities. It's playing 3 games in a few days. Take a look round the rest of the league. Kathryn, what are you making of the injuries?
My question mine's a very specific question, and I see this a lot in the women's game, because a lot of women's players get ACL injuries, and they have ages out, they come back and they get sort of little niggles or little other injuries after coming back and playing a few games. Obviously, I'm not expecting you guys to have the answers, because none of us are medical professionals, but when you do an ACL, so we've had Balumi makes his comeback, does his hamstring. Liam Miller makes his comeback after a few games, does his hamstring. Is there anything, that would be my question, is there anything the club can do to try and prevent that? Or is it just a case of like, there's not much you can do, it might just it can just happen? It just feels to me, it's just like, it could just be, like Baz said, like a horrible coincidence where they've both just done them. Or is there something that we're not quite doing to try and prevent that? That would be my only question on the injuries. I think the other ones, like they're just part of football, aren't they? I think most of the time, they're not. A lot of them aren't kind of really serious ones. Some of them, obviously, picked up in the game. The McBurney one, it sounded like he maybe had a bit of an issue, played through it, and then it got a little bit worse. But that was my kind of query on the injuries of the guys that have come back from ACLs, and then they both do the hamstring. Is that just a coincidence, or is there something we can do to avoid it? I think we all kind of said going into the season McBurney was the big one, and I think Kyle Jersey's done brilliant in leading the line in his absence. I think he works his socks off. He's filled that role really, really well. The only thing on Saturday, I did think we missed McBurney's presence in the box. When Giles was, getting space on the left, it was like he was looking up to cross and he was like, Ollie's not there. Who am I crossing to? There's not quite maybe the same level of movement. There's not the same presence. There's no one to you're banking on to get on the end of a cross. And that was the only thing I think maybe we missed on Saturday, not having McBurney. So when he comes back, I think that'll be, I think he's probably the biggest loss, it feels like. And hopefully, Baz will know more, but hopefully he's not sort of too far away.
Yeah. Look, you're going to miss, without a doubt. I sort of said this after the Leicester game, that there were a couple of chances that Kyle had. There was the one incredible ball from deep from Liam Miller to the back post, and Kyle got up and headed it sort of down into the ground straight at the goalkeeper. And there was a second one where he got played through. I think it was from Crooks that tapped it through, and then Kyle ran on and sort of took it away from goal, and the shot was blocked. Look, they do miss McBurney. He's the one they need back, and I think he's the one they need also to be really careful with. Two parts to that question, KB. We'll tackle the McBurney thing first. So it is his calf. He's not training with the team. They did an open training session. Fantastic event, by the way, at the MKM on Monday, and he wasn't there, but he wasn't training. He's working alone. I think that there's a hope that he could be back for Portsmouth. That was originally said to me a couple of weeks ago that he was going to be out probably until Portsmouth. Then there was a sort of feeling he might be back on the bench at Derby, but I think they're taking it. There's no real. I think they're just taking it day to day at the minute and seeing how he is. Obviously, he wants to play. He would play on Saturday at Norwich. He would have played against Leicester and against Charlton, but they're trying to be really careful with him. So I think that the hope is that he could be involved against Pompey on November the whatever it is, 8th. Is it 8th? Yeah, 8th. The last game before the break. But they're also aware, and this kind of fits in with a lot of the other players. They're also aware they've got after the Portsmouth game, they've then got the 2-week break for internationals, and then you've got that mega run from mid-November effectively right through until March. They might get a week off for the FA Cup 4th round, but given how Jakurovic is going, they might actually win a 3rd round game for the first time in ever. So, but they want to be really careful with him. So we'll have to wait and see. But in terms of the ACL, the problem is very often when they operate on ACLs, they graft a bit of the hamstring, don't they, to redo the ACL. And so that's why you see so many hamstring injuries after ACLs. And I think it always happens, doesn't it? We said it before. We said it way back in the summer that, yes, it's great that they were going to get Miller and Bellumi back, but the reality was they were probably going to lose them again at some point with a hamstring problem. And so it's unfortunate that's been the case. And you just have to suck it up. I think realistically, Miller is probably going to be sidelined for a month, possibly 6 weeks. But obviously that takes into account two of that's going to be the international break. So that means he won't be going away with Canada, unfortunately for Liam. Congratulations on the birth of his daughter Summer, by the way. That must have been a really difficult 48 hours 72 hours for Miller, because he had the buzz of the Leicester game, the birth of his daughter on Friday, and then the absolute devastation of the injury on Saturday. We could all see how annoyed he was when he came off. So the ups and downs of life, I suppose, for Liam. But yeah, if he's going to be out for a month, potentially 6 weeks, that's another blow. But Bellumi potentially back for Portsmouth. Again, they're going to have a decision to make. Do they risk him against Portsmouth or give him another couple of weeks and back for QPR? So that's the reality of it. I was going to say the crux of it, but Matt Crooks is we'll come on to that in a bit.
We'll come to Crooks in a bit. Fletch, I know you do your research on everything, and Baz, you've educated me there. I didn't realise, because I don't read surgeon news, that they were using part of the hamstring to repair the knee. So I've learnt something today. Thank you for that. I've never seen any studies on it. Have you? I'm putting you on the spot here, Fletch. Or anybody seen any studies on ACLs and subsequent hamstring injuries?
I've never sat down and read a full PhD dossier or dissertation on it, but I think, Baz is right in the sense of other muscles and other parts of the leg are usually, you take a graft of fibers of the muscle or whatever to repair certain areas, and that can have, as we've seen, a detrimental effect on not just Hull City players but other players in the division. People are talking about an injury crisis. I've just been having a very quick look through an injury list that I can find on the Championship, and the usual suspects are things like calf injuries, knee injuries, hamstrings and other muscles around the legs. And there probably are quite a few variables in play. And some of the examples that I will give is, one is, what are the procedures in place from each club to determine whether a player is ready to go or not? Because obviously they will do their checklists. I spoke to Andy Butler, who's the manager of Scunthorpe United, a couple of weeks ago, and we was talking about a player who was going to be coming back into the game. And he said, well, he's done 96% of his loads on running, but he failed at that, so we're going to move him back down to 90. Now, I don't know what that meant, how you measure that, but that shows how specific that some clubs can be with players depending on what their injury criteria is. The other situation is, how are they handling the player? So Sergey said after the Charlton game with Mike White that Ollie McBurney's itching to get back onto the football pitch, but they're having to basically restrain him because the player believes he can play, but other people can't. And you have to have that man management of letting a player down. And in some cases, some players might go out too early when they think that they're ready and something else goes. Probably not a variable factor at this level, but it does happen in other divisions, is the conditions of the pitches you're playing on and the training facilities. Certainly happens with the team I cover, Scarborough, where they've gone from playing on 3G pitches and 4G pitches, where you get lots of ankle injuries and knee injuries because the ground won't take the comfort and the turning of the legs. So there's various factors in play. I think it's a bit harsh for people to maybe suggest that it's the actual training ground and the facilities that they're playing on as a specific problem, because the amount of scientific research that goes into the percentages of the certain fibers to grass and astroturf, they're not going to lay it down if they don't think it's not fit for purpose. So I think that's a bit too much of a stretch, but it happens at lower divisions. So in summary, there's lots of different variables in play. Some managers will train multiple times in a week, and because of the limits that players are pushed to in terms of their running, etc., then you might break down with lots of injuries, but you do it for higher performance, higher stamina when you're in a game.
I just the manager, when I hear him, comes across as he's caring and he's aware of player welfare and how to get the best out of them and managing their fitness and everything like that. And I heard him talk recently and basically say, look, we're really just, it's recovery time between games. Certainly in a 3-game week, it's just recovery time, making sure the players are as fit as possible. Just one thing on the injury thing, because it's a bit depressing talking about it all the time. Baz, what's the situation with Crooks? The owner raised it in the Q&A on Friday night. Is he definitely going to have an operation? Because he was due a scan yesterday, or seen a specialist yesterday. Have you any news on that?
Yeah, I don't. It was quite comical yesterday. He was at the training session but didn't play. He sort of walked out with his big coat and slippers on. He was kind of one way short of a pipe and a glass of single malt and an armchair. But I think the prognosis is more positive on Crooksy. So the hope is that he doesn't now need surgery, or certainly not yet, that he can keep playing. So they've got to be careful with him, because I think, but my feeling is that he can play through it. Certainly, I think he'll be available for the next 3 games going into the break, and then they might reassess during the international break. And it might be a case that then he's going to have surgery. It might be a case that he can just keep playing through the season and then manage the pain with painkilling injections, etc., and he can get through to the back end of the season, and perhaps, depending on where City's season is in March, April time, they then make a decision, a bit like George Honeyman a few years ago in the promotion season, when he'd had an ongoing problem and they managed it week to week, and then as soon as the season finished, he went under the knife. and he was obviously he missed a large chunk of that particular summer. It might be a case that with Matt Crooks that's what they do, but he obviously wants to play on. He's happy to play on. I think they feel that they can get away without in being operated on in the short term, but it is a case of let's suck it and see. I mean, the gaffer was like, it's unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. It's his pectoral is the issue, and he did it when he was slipping or dummying for Liam Miller's goal on Tuesday night. So again, another incredible situation that City have got found themselves into. So in terms of Crooks, to sum it up, I think he's going to be available for the next 3 games, then reassess in the break, and then just play it by ear. But he doesn't need, from what I gather, he does not need immediate surgery. Just quickly on Fletch's point about the facilities, I think aesthetically the training ground looks shambolic, doesn't it? You see the pictures of it, and it looks like a flurry of porter cabins, and you see other clubs' training grounds, and you think, bloody hell, they've invested their Premier League money so well. City did not, and they didn't. When they got into the Premier League, there was no legacy. They don't own the stadium, and the training ground isn't particularly great. But what they have done over the last few years is they have invested a lot into the facilities within the training ground that perhaps you don't see on pictures that are published on social media. The pictures at the training ground are very good. Exactly the same standard as they are at the MKM Stadium. The training ground pitches have had an awful lot of investment and get as much care as the main pitch at the stadium. And I think the amount of the cryotherapy and all the stuff they have behind the scenes, that, as I say, fans don't see that because they just see the players out on the training pitch and they see the pictures of the stuff behind, the facade of the training ground. It doesn't look great, but they have invested a lot more kind of behind the scenes to try and make it feel a bit more professional. When the players come into the training ground, they've invested a lot in the dressing room there, the players' areas, the baths, the ice baths, the cryotherapy stuff, the fitness, the gymnasium, all the stuff behind the scenes that fans don't see has had a lot of investment. So as I say, the aesthetics of the place still look League Two, but I think behind it, within the building itself, it's a lot better than what people see.
I remember the ice baths when I think it was under Phil Parkinson. There were wheelie bins full of ice, and they had players go in. The players, I don't think, were over happy about it at the time. You've answered James Drury's question to the 1904 club. Can I ask the three of you, 1904 club? Can I ask you the three of you a question about Crooks? I wondered on Saturday with McBurney's absence, and Joseph was always going to play up there. But can Crooks play up top? I'm trying to think back through his career. Has he ever played up top as a striker?
He's played up top for City, I think, under Ruben Sayers. Sure he did.
Okay.
Kathryn?
I think I remember him starting up front in a game, almost like a false 9 type role. I can't remember which game it was because last season just sort of all blurred into one. But he definitely was up there at one point, I think. I think it might have been, I don't know if it was down to injury or if we were sort of playing a bit more defensively, but he's definitely played there. And I think he could, he's very good at getting a goal. Like he's actually kind of got that instinct of a goal scorer, like getting on the end of things. I know he kind of slipped for the cross against Leicester, a great dummy, as you might call it. But quite a lot of his goals for City is him being kind of like bombing on from midfield and getting on the end of things. So I think he could fulfill that role. And it's an interesting point because I was saying earlier of Kyle Joseph, I think he's been brilliant at running the line, holding the ball up, working really, really hard. But I do think he could do that out wide, especially with now Miller's out. I think, that could be an option for Norwich potentially to have Crooks in the middle and, move Joseph back out wide or, then they can kind of maybe link up together. But it's an interesting option. And, beyond Joseph, there aren't really many other players that can play in that central striker role. So I'd be interested to see him given a shot there.
He played.
Just on that point, before we go to Fletch, Tom Marshall says to the 1904 club, do you think Destan could start with Joseph going back on the wing? Would be good to see Ndala at some point if he's fit enough. Is Destan fully up to speed with the English game yet?
I think he's got to start at some point. And in fairness to Destan, we've only seen him off the bench in the final few minutes, generally when they're trying to see out see out a game. He's never started a game, and I agree with Kathryn. I think you could get away with sticking Joseph back wide, bring in Undala or Akintola on the other side, so you've got kind of two wingers, if you like, in that sense. Play Crooks further forward and have Gelhardt playing off him. That is an example, or Destan playing as the number 9, and Gelhardt in the 10 perhaps, or even out wide with Crooks playing off Destan. You've certainly got the height there. Whether you've got the mobility with Crooks and Destan together, but then you've got Joseph and Gelhardt that provide that kind of pressing, that intensity as well. But Crooks, I mean, I really like Crooks at Crooks. He's very mobile. He's wily. He's smart, and as you say, Burns, he's got a goal in him. If you're going to get Crooks, is the sort of player, and we've seen from his goals for City so far that he gets tap-ins, or when the ball's pinging around the box, he can put it in. He's not going to be somebody that sprints from the edge of the box, from halfway and to the edge of the box and sticks it in from 25 yards. That's not his game. He's also not the sort of player that's probably going to ping it from the edge of the box in the top corner, but get him in and around the penalty area, the 6-yard box. He's a real threat, and he's got that. He's clinical in front of goal. So yeah, you've got it's horses for courses, but you've got to, with the absence of McBurney, you've got to find a way of scoring goals. You've now lost Liam Miller, who's a big goal threat. You've obviously Gelhardt we'll talk about, but he's in fantastic form this season. 3 in the last 3 games. So yeah, I'm not averse to going to Norwich and sticking Destan up front, and getting and Joseph wide, Gelhardt on the other side, and perhaps Gelhardt in the number 10. He's still got options despite everybody that's not available to him.
Just to add to that, Baz.
Go on then.
Sorry, I was going to say Chris Wilder, when he was at Borough, occupied Matt Crooks either as a centre forward or as a very high pressing number 10. He played 77 games, scored 17, set up another 10 in a system where Chris Wilder would routinely put 2 players up front and then sub them out after 60 minutes because they were energetic pressing. And he's a tall figure, so he could be good in the air as well.
I think he played at Cardiff up front, Burnsy.
Right.
Last season away at Cardiff, I think he played up front. And I feel like there was another game or two where Kathryn's right, playing the false 9, but I think he actually played, as Ruben says, his centre forward, as well as Cardiff away.
I just thought I'd check it. It's an option. And when you think about that Gelhardt goal against Charlton, it was Crooks, I think, was furthest forward on the press. Yes. He got a little toe end on the ball, came to Gelhardt, and he tucked it away. We'll not go, it's still a bit early, but a general question from Stephen Franklin to the 1904 club. With all these injuries, do you think we'll be able to bring players in January? Let's not go into what they need and everything like that, but is there scope? Are they lining people up, Baz? What do you know?
Yeah, they're well underway with January, but obviously the problem they're going to have is the squad size. It was slightly easier in January last year because they could deregister Bellumi and Miller, knowing that they were going to be out, and that gave them scope. This, as we stand now, they're going to struggle. It's going to be a case of, we saw with Abu Kamara. Abu Kamara needed to go to bring in Amir Hadzimatovic, who incidentally had a bang on the head, I think, on Saturday. So he's missed. For those people that were at the track, there was over 2,000 there on Monday. Amir didn't train. So I believe he got a knock on the, nothing serious. I don't believe it impacts him for Saturday at Norwich, but that's why he wasn't training on Monday. But yeah, Kamara had to go to allow him in. Obviously, JB came in, but because of his age, he came in under the kind of the age thing was okay. So if they could go out and sign maybe some players of 20, but in terms of senior players, it's going to have to be one out, one in. Casey Palmer could have gone in January. And given what happened before Sheffield United, he would have been on the list. You think maybe they look to try and move Casey Palmer out. He wants to play football. He's not getting that here enough from his point of view. But now he's obviously out, injured. He's hurt his knee. So what impact does that have on January? So it is going to be a case of, it's going to be hard for them in January. The restrictions they're under make it even harder. But look, they'll find a way because they're very good at wheeling and dealing. Aren't they? So the other side of the coin is if everybody's fully fit, you go, well, where do they need to strengthen? I know the gaffer wants a squad of 50 players because of all the injuries, but it is going to be hard for him, Burnsy. But yeah, as you'd expect, they're well on the way. They've got plans, they've got lists. We just have to wait and see how the land lies, but it's going to be difficult, as we know.
Anybody quick thought on that? Because I have another question for Baz. Either of you got a question? Sorry, I feel like a schoolmaster today. I'm really sorry.
I like it. Keep going. You're doing really well. It's almost like you used to present on radio.
I used to in the dim and distant days, mainly dim, to be perfectly honest. But what was I going to go? Yeah, we mentioned Crooks, and I mentioned Ajan did a Q&A with the fans on Friday night. You've been chatting to him, Baz. Is there anything you want to head our way? So we're bang up to date on the 1904 Club, as we always are. Make sure you listen, people, because, lots of stuff comes out on this programme. A lot of hot air, but that's just mainly me. But a lot of good stuff comes out. Baz is in the know. What's going on, Baz?
Yeah, I think he's quite positive. He's very happy with the coach. Really likes him. He obviously, I think he had a few things to say on one or two players' agents on Friday night. He talked about obviously the Crooks situation. He covered the stadium, the expansion of the MKM, well, not the MKM itself, but the area around it. In that they're trying to, obviously, as we know, they had grand plans. TAN had grand plans a couple of years ago. I think that's been scaled back somewhat from what they initially want. That the sports village, as Tan Kesler referred to it as. But they want to. We all know what a mess it is around Walton Street. What we've seen the state of the outside pitches at the Tigers Trust. It needs investment. They're working with the local authority to try and get a situation where they can redevelop that area and come out of Bishop Burton, because Bishop Burton's been a fantastic facility for the academy for the last few years, but it is a college. It's not their own site, so that he's hoping that they are making progress. They'll have some significant news in January, hopefully, and he hopes that within the not too distant future that they'll be able to adapt. I don't think it's going to be a huge project now. I think it's going to be a case of adapt. There's already the structure in place with the Tigers Trust Arena. I think it's a case of adapt what's there, sort out the mess that's outside with the pitches, get new pitches, both AstroTurf, well, 3G or whatever you want to call it, 4G, might even be 5G by the time it happens, and grass pitches, and have a proper training academy facility that the club can be proud of, because at the minute it's fragmented, isn't it? You've got the stadium, you've got Bishop Burton, you've got Cottingham. It's a very fragmented club. They don't own any of it. But in terms of like the training ground and the stadium, I think having the site at the MKM where they can, it can be a really nice academy. It helps when you're signing players of the future if you're bringing them to your own facility that looks smart, that's state of the art. So he's quite positive about that. And I know the council get a lot of hammer around Hull Fair, but I think the council are working with the council. Want this to happen is the key thing. The club want it to happen. It's going to cost a couple of £1 million to get it done, which is how that's funded is the big question. But I'm sure they are on that. They'll figure it out. But they want it. They're pressing ahead with it, and they had a meeting a couple of weeks ago to take it forward. They've got a project manager. As I say, I think the next steps come towards the early part of next year of getting things firmed up and hopefully spades in the ground in the not too distant future. But let's see what happens. But yeah, he's quite positive about that and wants that to happen.
Okay, good stuff. So there you go, because we do get a fair, usually every week on the 1904 Club, somebody's asking us with what's going on in and around the stadium. Should we turn to Norwich? And I do still want to mention Joe Gelhardt, because he's playing really well at the moment. But should we just have a little wander to Norwich ahead of the game? Kathryn, they're a basket case, aren't they? What's going on with them?
They are, and I did wonder when they lost to Swansea at the weekend whether that was going to be potentially the end of Liam Manning, who seems to be really struggling there at the minute. I always thought it was a strange move going from Bristol City to Norwich. And obviously he's still there at the minute, and I'm sort of tentatively pleased about that, because you don't kind of want that sack the manager and get an immediate response. I do still remember, it's a weird kind of coincidence that last season, obviously, we won those 3 games under Tim Volter, and then we went to Norwich, and that was the end. That was basically the start of the end of Tim Volter, wasn't it? And I don't think he won it or got another point after that, potentially. So we've now gone 4 games unbeaten, and that Norwich come around again, and we've not got the best record there in the last few years. So I'm hoping that this is the year that changes with the problems they seem to have. I mean, it was interesting. I was watching the highlights, and he took Sargent off at the weekend, didn't he? And Sargent did not look happy about being taken off. He's obviously been their main goal scorer, their main goal threat, their best player for the last couple of years. And almost, I'm kind of surprised no one's come in for him. Maybe a team chasing promotion, or even like a team that's gone up to I know he's been in the Premier League and didn't necessarily do it, but he's got a very consistent goal scoring record in the Championship now for a couple of years, and I'm sort of surprised he's still there. But yeah, I don't know whether, kind of going into Saturday, whether what that relationship with the manager is going to be like after that kind of frosty exchange when he got taken off. So it feels like an opportunity for us to kind of go there and extend this unbeaten run and go and put pile more misery onto them. But I just kind of got that in my head. Well, we've obviously got the injuries, that thing with Norwich about the sort of dodgy record there, hoping that doesn't kind of come to the fore again. But yeah, I was expecting them to do, even though I thought it was a strange move from Bristol to Norwich, I was expecting them to be a better team than what they've shown so far.
Okay. Kathryn, obviously a fully paid up member of the typical City Syndrome club,
Just thinking
which we've all got a subscription to it. I think Manning went because wasn't he born in Norwich? That was his first club, and that's the connection. But it's there's talk, Fletch, of because the fans are not happy at Norwich, and the owner was flying in this week to have talks with the manager. But there's talk of a protest on Saturday, isn't there?
I've heard rumblings of it, yes. I know that when Bristol City went there recently and Bristol City won, obviously the visiting supporters gave Liam Manning a lot of stick, but the sad thing is the Norwich fans joined in the classic chant of "you're getting sacked in the morning," very Postecoglou-esque. So they've lost all 5 games at Carrow Road. I think the only team left in the top 4 divisions is West Ham, who've lost all their games at home as well. And there's quite a lot of, they've already got rid of Graham Potter and replaced him with Nuno Espirito Santo. Looking at their squad, they do have injuries up front, but 3 of the 6 that are contracted are out injured at the moment. It feels like there's still members of that squad that were brought in from the previous management as well. So you could say, being kindly, they're in transition. But if you're losing 5 games at home, then something obviously tactically isn't spot on with what Liam Manning wants to develop within that team. Because Norwich City, historically, whenever I think of Norwich City away, as Kathryn alludes to, with City's track record, it's never been a good hunting ground for the Tigers to go to. I think they've won once in the 21st century there, 2011, which ended a really long away run. I can't think of any other time after that. So this is a test now. I know it doesn't really matter to the squad in the here and now, but to fans it does. This is a test now of being able to get over a side who maybe people expect Hull City to be able to turn over, because Norwich are poor at home. They need to be resolute, they need to be gritty, they need to determine to keep this form going, because the numbers suggest that Hull City have got a very good chance here, but it's never that straightforward.
Fletch.
Who invited these two? Just we were going so well. We were building to a head of steam.
I did say it was an opportunity that we could go there and win. I just also sprinkled a little bit of, but you can't kind of never get too high, never get too low. That's what the professionals always say to us, isn't it?
I would have said get Chris Sutton on, but he was threatening to punch Rory Smith, I think it was, on the Monday nightclub on 5 Live last night. So I don't think he's in the best of moods with his Norwich City Football Club.
No, he's not.
I just think it's. I think if they go for it, Norwich confidence presumably is so fragile. If they start well and they conceded in Swansea's first attack at the weekend, and I think if you go for it, it's eminently winnable. But it's a tennis ball protest that's coming on Saturday, or supposedly, but it seems to split the Norwich fans.
Yeah, I mean, the picture I saw said we're going to do the protest at 19:02 in the evening. So, I mean, the game kicks off at 12:30. So I'm guessing that it won't really affect the game. So, whatever. Yeah, but I think obviously I need to be careful what I say about Norwich after what happened last year. But they're still coming for me. The pitchforks will be out when I get there. But yeah, look, they're obviously not happy with the club. I mean, some of them are moaning about the redevelopment of Carrow Road, which I find wholly bizarre that the club are trying to redevelop the stadium or whatever it is, and the fans are kicking off. They're not happy with Ben Napper, who's a sporting director. Obviously, Liam Manning, the results are terrible, aren't they? But you're right, the protest thing seems to have fragmented people. Some people say it's a good idea. Some people are laughing at them. So it feels like a fragmented fan base, and what have you. So look, but whatever, I couldn't care less about them. It's about City. It's about what we do when we get there. And as you say, you've got to. Given what I don't want him to do is go there and be too pragmatic. I think there's an argument to say that they focused too much on Charlton on Saturday, and Charlton's strength rather than focused on ours. And I also can accept that he was seconds away from winning the game, and if you come away with the win, everybody goes, you got it right. So I don't want him to go there and be too conservative against a side that are in, as Kathryn says, in awful form. And you've got to, when these teams are in the state they are, you cannot give them a leg up. And so many times with City, we've seen them give a leg up to the opposition. Go there, get that first goal, and a bit like they did at Watford, but then don't do what they did at Watford and sit back and allow Watford to come back and win the game at an absolute canter, and then sack the manager anyway. So go there, get that first goal, and when you get that first goal, keep them, because they'll turn. If you get the first goal at Carrow Road Saturday, they will turn. I mean, they'll be angry anyway, but they'll be supportive to start with because that's what fans generally are. But if City get the first goal, they will turn and they will be all out for the manager. Don't, be prepared for that. Don't then go, and then, do stupid things and allow them back in the game and to go and win the game, and you come away losing 2 or 3-1 and you go, what have we done there? We've thrown a game again. Like they threw at Watford, they threw the game. They bottled it. In a game they should never have done so when they were leading at half time. They were completely in control, bar a couple of Watford moments. Go and win the game, and they've got to do that Saturday. What is it? They've lost 5 of the last 6 to Norwich. One win at Norwich, which came in 2010, since 1972, I think it is. So the record at Carrow Road is disgusting, but it can't affect that. It's gone. New team, new manager. Go and win the game, and then you've got Derby away. You take a Derby of, whatever. They've had a couple of good results. It loathes me to say you take a point there at the Sheep Dip, but take a point if you can. Then you beat Portsmouth, and you suddenly get 7 points from 9 again. I know it's not that straightforward, but I just think go and win at Norwich, and that sets you up for the week ahead.
Can I give you the information of the protest?
Team talks, Baz, I think.
Say again.
I say you should start doing the team talks, Baz. Get you in before the Norwich,
wasn't it?
Go and win at Norwich.
Yeah, go and win at Norwich. Go and win at Derby. I've got to have. I'm going to the Lionesses game. I've got to have. I'm booked it at the Quacks later on to have my jabs for the first trip to Derby in since last season, and then I'm having a double dose ready for next week as well.
You went very Steven Gerrard there, Baz. I very much enjoyed it.
You're welcome.
Just on the protest, apparently the 1902 group was set to do a sit-in protest that was planned for the game against Hull City, but those plans have now escalated. This coincides with the club's decision to redevelop the ground, which are seen in completely unacceptable circumstances. As a result, we announce a tennis ball protest on Saturday at 19:02 on the clock. We ask every supporter to take part in throwing a tennis ball on the pitch in protest against the current ownership of the club and the decisions that have been taken.
How many fans are going to be there at 19:02? That's my question.
They don't mean 19 minutes into the game, do they? Like 19. It
must
be 19
minutes.
Just
they put the clock. No, but they put. If you look at the graphic, if you look at the graphic, it says 19:02.
We're going to leave the stadium and come back at 2 minutes past 7 when the stadium's shut and throw the tennis balls on. That'll show them.
Echoes of City at Bolton all those years ago. City were the original instigators of tennis ball protest. Shall we move on? Because I'm determined to have a quick word from you on Gelhardt. One of 9 different goal scorers this season, which I think is quite encouraging for the team and the squad and the manager and the fans, that 9 different people have scored. But he scored in his last 3 games. What are you making of him, Kathryn?
I'm finding it really hard to not fall in love with a loan player. That's the difficulty, because I keep forgetting that he's only on loan. He's been brilliant, and to be fair, I think, Baz, we were talking about the front line earlier and whether Gelhardt would be in the 10 or out wide. I think we had a bit of a debate about it last season, whether he was better in the 10 or out wide. I'm quite relaxed about where he plays, because he can pick the ball up kind of wherever he is on the pitch and get a goal. And he looks really, really confident, and obviously he's been in a great run of form. And it's good to see, because you need players to step up when McBurney's not there, and he's been the main source of the goals. And it was that combination of Giles, McBurney, and it felt, not predictable, but, when Chris Wilder came with Sheffield United, it was all about like, oh, well, that's all Hull can do. It's Giles, McBurney, and we'll stop that, and we'll stop Hull, basically. But I think we've showed in the last few games, I think Gelhardt has shown that he can step up in their absence. And actually, that's not all we can do. We've got quite a few different kind of options there. And he looks really confident. And obviously, yeah, I mean, he had his head in his hand, didn't he, when he didn't track the Berry for the goal on Saturday? But I think a lot had to happen before that, when the ball went into the net. So he was not completely at fault for that. But yeah, going forward, he's looking really good. And as I say, I keep forgetting that he's not a permanent signing. I mean, I know that it's not kind of out of the question maybe at the end of the season whether they could. I'm sure he would want to come back permanently, potentially. Whether we could do it financially might be another thing. But at the minute, I think everyone just loves having him here, and he seems to be enjoying his football as well, which I think is the main thing.
Here to that.
Any more, Fletch, or are you just going to say here?
I think KB's allowed to fall in love with Joe Gelhardt, because there have been forwards in the past who we can fall in love with. Look at Fraser Campbell all those years ago, taking City to places they've never been before then deciding to not come back. But I think it's good to know that there is a second key goal scoring option, and they're not just relying on McBurney in that area. But as Burnsy alludes to as well, 9 different goal scorers is extremely promising. So long may it continue.
Absolutely. And that feels like a fitting way to end on this episode of the 1904 Club. Fletch, I'm going to give you Star of the Week this week, just because you turned up on time. You've given your all. You've done well. So Star of the Week goes to Fletch this week. Well done, mate.
Thank you. How many episodes of Alan Partridge are you going to watch before Saturday?
I don't want to go, really.
Your homework is to find out which historical monarch would choose a certain type of car, and which one would it be.
Are we missing something with this kind of protest over redeveloping the ground? Like, not to go back to Norwich, but like, is there some reason they're angry about it? Like, are we missing a key part of the? Because it does sound weird.
It's something to do with 3,000 fans having to be relocated.
Moving out of the stadium.
They're moving the away fans round.
Quite often, doesn't
not
it?
to Ipswich or anything like that. But they just have to move out the seats, I think. So
I mean, that happened when
seems the local paper says they're a club in crisis. I don't think there's a better time to go from a City point of view. I know the history and everything like that and all that sort of stuff, but this is the best time to face them. They're all over the shop at the moment, on and off the field, and there doesn't seem any great sense of unity. You've got to exploit that. It's a great opportunity for me.
Yeah, that happens all the time now, isn't it? Yeah, with fans. Like, I mean, City, when they moved the East Stand and they put home fans in the North Stand, and at the time it seemed really controversial, but over a long period of time, actually, I think it's worked better in terms of the atmosphere. But at the time, I can remember fans being really angry that they had to move seats, which I suppose if you've been sat there for ages, you would be quite annoyed that having to move through no choice of your own. But in the long run, actually, at City, I think it's worked quite well. So that makes a little bit more sense, rather than them just kind of, being angry at redeveloping the ground and going back at 7 p.m. at night. Now I've kind of got more information. That makes a bit more sense, but still feels a bit strange. But yeah, I agree with Burnsy. I've changed my mind. It's now the best time to go to Norwich. We're going to win 3-0.
That's the attitude. There we go. That's the spirit, and that's how we're going to finish the 1904 Club this week with City winning 3-0 at Norwich. Please just go and do it. Anyway, if you're travelling to Carrow Road for the early kickoff on Saturday, safe travels, and then to Derby as well. And credit to them. It's not very often I will give that lot credit, but the ticket prices are ridiculously cheap comparatively in the Championship. I think adult tickets are only £20 for Pride Park, and it's one of the closer games as well. So hopefully City get a big backing because they deserve it down at Pride Park next Tuesday night. Burnsy, as always, an absolute pleasure to have your company. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kathryn, safe travels up to the Shire this evening to watch the Lionesses.
Thank you. Sorry, I did move seats numerous times during this podcast, but it was because I was trying to find somewhere quieter. And I think I managed on my third attempt in my different seat to find a slightly quieter spot.
You did a sterling job.
You were having your own personal game of musical chairs.
And Fletch, thanks for popping in, and hopefully we'll see your pretty face again soon.
No worries. I'll see you in another 8 weeks' time.
Up the Tigers. We'll see you again soon, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. And as I say, safe trip to Carrow Road if you're heading there.